What's good? It's your boy CJ Goodfellow. We back with another one. Another video. The Boxing Clinic, you dig. We rolling. Appreciate everybody that subscribed to the channel. Like, comment, bad promo, good promo, word of mouth, share the videos. Appreciate it. Really do. But Bob Arum, saying that UFC is boxing's villain. I'm gonna link the article in the description for Boxing Scene. And if you haven't seen the interview Bob Arum did, I think it's last year. The article goes back to he went on a UFC rant calling them skinheads. The majority of their fan base are skinheads. Voted for Trump. Boxing fans voted for Hillary, and it was just crazy, man. I seen the video. If you wanted the link, just comment and I'll hit you up with the link to the interview. But what's so funny is he this dude is a hypocrite, Jekyll and Hyde, whatever you want to call him. First he was like, I have no problem with Mayweather versus McGregor. Then the fight inched closer. Then he had an issue with it. Then he thanked, in between that, he thanked the UFC for showing him the television model to bring in, boxing back to regular TV. He gave them credit for that. He said the UFC has a great model, putting some of their content on regular TV and ESPN or Spike or Fox. And that's where he got his idea to bring Top Rank over to ESPN. But we clearly know Al Heyman, started that model in the sport of boxing. And he obviously don't want to give a fellow Harvard alum the credit that need to be deserved. He went outside the box to thank the UFC for that. Now, before that interview, he said most boxing fans like guys like Kelly Pavlik. Most UFC fans like guys like Kelly Pavlik. Skinhead, white guys, basically what he was hitting at, Bob Arum's Jewish. He was hitting at that the majority of the UFC like white fighters. And boxing doesn't have a lot of white prominent fighters no more. And that's true. Most of the white fighters that white fighters that they do have, are seen as the Eastern European or the UK guys, and we all know boxing does better when there's more more white fighters, American white fighters in the game. It's more, I think it would be more popular. It's safe to say, and I agree with him on that point. And he's saying that UFC had all the great white fighters. They had more popular white fighters. They're able to thrive more in UFC, and I'm not going to disagree with that, but. Calling them skinheads, I think that was just so disrespectful on so many levels. Saying all of them voted for Trump is so disrespectful on so many levels. I know a lot of black, people, that love the UFC, just as much or even way more than boxing. It's a lot of people out there. So to label them, all Trump voters, it's bullshit. But that was a past interview. Getting to what he said, right now, that was his history of waffling and flip-flopping. He says that now the UFC is the villain. It's boxing's villain. He said we got to defeat the UFC. In a recent interview, this is in the link. We got to defeat the UFC. All the promoters got to come together, work together to make the best possible fights happen. So the UFC doesn't take over. He said it was a time where boxing, was a top sport. He said you would have newspaper, reporters, commenting on it, all the time. He said it was a top sport, and he's right. It was a top sport. 80s, 90s, it was a top sport. It was headlining, for what I understand, and it slipped, and I think it began to slip, when the pay-per-view model, got to a point where it was that transition from the 90s into kind of that mid 2000 kind of area where you transition in the stars, and it wasn't the Oscar, the Tyson, the Trinidad, the guys like that, the Shane Mosley, they was trying to usher in a new era, sort of like what boxing doing now, getting away from the Pacquiao Mayweather era. And I think a lot of people lost interest, and it became very, very business like atmosphere, over the last 5 to 7 years, in my opinion, especially with Al Heyman, making more of a business model. It started with him and Berto milking HBO. I talked about that the other day. So he's right. The promoters need to work together, but he hasn't shown the ability to want to work together. And I can't say that Al Heyman shows the ability to want to work with him. He has sent Al Hammond has sent his lower level fighters over there like John Molina, Felix Diaz, stuff of that nature. He sent guys like that, and Bob Arum sent Lomachenko to fight Gary Russell to Showtime because Gary Russell, whoever was in his favor, won the purse bid. But I don't think I just have to believe it when I see it, man. We talked about it the other day. I don't know if Bob Arum is willing to face. I mean, to put his A fighters in there with Bob Arum, and I understand it's at the point where it kind of like he has no choice, especially in the welterweight division, man. Really has no choice. If he goes up to lightweight, Lomachenko, he really has no choice either. So maybe this is his waving the white flag. This is his cry before him giving up to the fall that he has to work with Al Haymon, because Al Haymon works with everybody other than Bob Arum. Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum worked on Ndongo and Crawford, but Al Haymon and Eddie Hearn have a great relationship. Even they was going to do a Mayweather versus Eddie Hearn, UK American little fight card thing over there in the UK. I don't know where that stands. That was about a year ago, but Eddie Hearn and Al made Kell Brook, Sean Porter, Kell Brook, Earl Spence. I mean, they made a lot of good fights. Carl Frampton. Even though he's not with Eddie Hearn, but he's from the UK. So Bob Arum is he's the one that don't work with nobody really, unless the cards are stacked in his favor. He's not sending his fighters over to do shit with nobody unless unless it's a purse bid. But you have to see it to believe it with him, man. You really do. It's on him. He's in the corner. Al Haymond's pretty much cornered the market, and with Lou DiBella, Eddie Hearn, About Billions Promotion, Mayweather Promotions, and he's working with Ringstar Promotions, to bring the Santa Cruz Abner Mars separate co-feature bout. I mean, and Richard Schaefer is buying up everything, and he's back working with Al Haymon. Bob Arum got to wave the right flag soon, or try to create other, doors. And he's innovative. He can create other doors. But he's took Pacquiao to China. He took, him to Australia. Now that he don't have an A side, he's going to have to start working with Al or, create a new door. And we'll see which way he go, but I have to see it to believe it, in my opinion. But we gone.